We're about to start in a couple of minutes. Muy buenos días, son las 10
Good
de la mañana.
morning, it's 10 a.m. and we are ready to start with this panel discussion about social sustainability in Latin American region. My name is Francisco Madrid from Nahuac University in Mexico. I'm very pleased to welcome you all. We have a very amazing team today. First of all, really good friends and also experts in our region on very wide points of view in different countries. And without further ado, I would like to ask Jafar Jafari to enlighten us with some thoughts to start.
Please.
Welcome to today's seminar. Unfortunately, I can't speak Spanish, so I will be needing to speak in English, and it will be translated to Spanish. This is the 21st seminar in this series. Each time there's a different topic. Today, for example, is Latin America, and it's in Spanish. And we'll also have different languages on Japanese, English, French, Portuguese, but most of the times we host seminars in English.
I try to say a few things in Spanish. I'm trying to learn Spanish. The purpose of our webinar series, which is this is the 21st webinar, is to concentrate on a segment of tourism which has been not studied or ignored or disregarded, and that is the informal sector. By informal sector, we mean the sectors that are made up of small communities, small businesses in tourism, small operators, and so on and so forth. Everybody's talking about the big operators, mass destinations, etc. But the reality is the bulk of tourism is informal sector. So that's why we decided to have this webinar series, which we call the Smart Community webinar series. All of our past webinars in English and foreign languages are accessible through the website that you are connected right now, and will be so in the future. We have lined up all the webinars for the rest of the year, all the way to December. So if you go to our website and go to upcoming webinars, you find the themes of forthcoming webinars. So once more, thank you very much for joining us on this webinar series. Thank you very much, Paco, for organizing and working with the panelists on a topic which is extremely important to us. Fortunately, we have a simultaneous interpretation in Spanish. So the people like me who have limitations with the Spanish can follow your remarks in English. Thank you very much, and the podium is yours.
Thank you very much indeed, Jafar. Thank you for this opportunity for us, for our region, to discuss these very important issues of the sustainability in this approach of the social dimension. Gracias a todos ustedes por acompañarnos el día.
Thank you all for welcoming and for coming today. In today's webinar, I'll be introducing each one of the 5 experts in the region. And for logistic reasons, we will be starting right away with Dr. Alexandre Panoso Neto. As you know, he is one of the most distinguished academia specialists in Brazil in the University of Sao Paulo. And he's currently working on universities in Brazil. So without further ado, Alexandre, thank you for being with us today, and the stage is yours. Thank you, Dr. Marin. Thank you, Dr. Jafari, and all of the partners, friends of tourism in Latin America, in the world. I believe that this webinar is very important because we have to stay together right now. This crisis moment that for some is tougher than for others, but it's tough for all of us. So I appreciate, I'm very thankful for this invitation for Dr. Madrid and Dr. Jafari. And I'm also very thankful to be the first one to present. My presentation, I don't know if you can all see it right now, is a presentation a little bit more extensive. Today I'm living in, I'm not gonna be sure if 10 to 15 minutes are enough time for my topic, but I'm sure that if I go beyond that time, Paco will let me know. I'm in a country today where people are informed using papers. They're looking for actual information. They will be very perturbed. So I will always start that someone that's pessimist is just a very well-informed optimist. I believe that we are not really that informed. So when Paco invited me to talk about sustainability, I thought, how can you talk about sustainability in Brazil, in our region, in all Latin America, when I remember that last year, great territories that are biosystems, very important for Latin America, were just burned. One that was Pantanal in Brazil, a very special region, and another one, all of the fires in the Amazonia rainforest. That was very hard. And we know that this topic is because of lack of politic wellness of our countries, Brazil's country. And now we in Brazil have more than 4,000 deaths because of COVID in a government that does not accept or is not working towards vaccination. So how can we talk about tourism in Latin America and sustainability? So I just talked about some white thoughts for reflection. I have seen a little bit of the presentations from my colleagues, and I believe that it is very on point because we talk about the starting point on this topic. So to start, the topic about Latin America from Joaquin Torres Garcia is America Invertida. And America has always been seen as magic, utopia, exoticism, and others. And we always have a small idea about development, about the society, something that comes from outside. And very few times we have or we practice an idea about development that's original from Latin America. So this is one of the key points that we always export models especially touristic models, and it's a very hard critique. So we have that most of these models are not from these regions. So we've always had this Latin America on this utopic idea, whereas the magic realism from Garcia Marquez makes us think about Latin America as something that's just fantasy, something different, something exotic that deserves to be visited by tourists to see what is really different. Here you have the example of liberation philosophy, liberation theology from Enrique Dussel, Leonardo Wolfi, that in some ways started to build a thought in Latin America that is owned to Latin America. When they started, it was just a proposal of very original development philosophy that had the point of view from Latin America. Now, when we talk about 20th century, what did we have? Instability, inflation, just commercial isolation. So we can see right here the GDP from Brazil, for example. You have more than 8,000 in Brazil, Mexico, Haiti doesn't even reach $800. Whereas you have Germany, you have Spain, Portugal that has 23,000, and United States that had almost $60,000. So this is just a huge unbalance. Very interesting, very big. And with all of these things, we talk about Latin America and their governments. We have this idea of austerity and very few intervention from states. The one that we have comes from IMF and World Bank. Because right now, in this historic moment, state intervention is very important for survival on Brazil. We have more than 100 million that are very unclear when it comes to food security, people that are at risk that they don't have anything to eat. So we need public policies. And I'm talking about this because if you're going to talk about tourism, all of this you need to think about, and it's all related. That image that we have on this continent. Yes, if you talk about tourism and this and that, it's okay. But what I am trying to focus on is the hardest topics, the harshest topics that will help us just move on from the place we are. For example, on the 50 most violent cities in the world, 43 in Latin America. In Brazil last year, more than 43,000 people died from firearms. And we have in my country right now a government that every day makes a proposal about not having direct elections next year. That if the president doesn't have the result he wants, we may have a problem. And this is not just in Brazil, we have other countries as well. So, for example, when it comes to tourism, we know now that more than 50% of international tourism is tourism that comes from Central Europe. And in South America, Central America, Mexico, and the Caribbean, we have around 20 million tourists. And this is just 2019 before the pandemic. So this means that 9% of touristic flow worldwide. If we just talk about South America, we have 5% of worldwide touristic flow. And if we see a country with 1 million like Brazil, that's fourth, fifth biggest in Latin America, we have less than 500,000%, 500,000 of the touristic flow. So Brazil doesn't even have more than 7 million tourists a year. And this is just asymmetry. So in all of this region, we have more than 5 countries, only 5 countries that have more than 4 million tourists: Mexico, Brazil, Argentina, Dominican Republic, and Chile. And these are just structural problems.
El tema de la infraestructura, algunos
Is a topic on infrastructure. Some parts we do have,
Machu Picchu,
but for example, we have Machu Picchu that has several structural problems. Tikal in Guatemala,
é uma cidade
Ouro Preto in Brazil, that is also very important for Brazil. We have the Amazonia in Brazil.
né?
And these are just some of the problems. Other ones are like environmental problems.
Que é mais de tema geográfico.
And the problem that for me is the most key one is geography. And we have no way to solve this. The great breach and great distances between places where tourists come from. So I think about how can a beach in Brazil can be or can compete against Cancun for United States-based tourists. That's impossible.
Eu pongo outro aqui.
And also another key problem that I see you see here is the breach between tourism and market studies. For us, people that work in market,
Em academia,
for us that are in academia, we are very enclosed in the university's walls, and we need to stop this. And this is why Jafar Jafari is trying that this study, this academia topic, goes beyond this, just to make a bridge between marketing and academia from tourism. So we're working with Jafari on this goal, ethics and overcoming. So these are very wide topics, but that's why my presentation is just point of thoughts for that. So you need to prepare communities. You have great examples in Mexico and all Latin America. I think Rodolfo will be talking about this in Costa Rica. We have really good examples in Brazil and Argentina.
Temos que trabalhar essas comunidades.
But we need to talk with these communities. A lot has been said about government's responsibilities, and you forget the responsibility about us from organized civil societies. And you need to overcome the topic of planning and move forward to actually doing. In Brazil, we have a very important master in tourism, Professor Marius Carlos, for those of you who know him. And he always tells us that in Brazil, we've always had a lot of tourism-related planning, but we've never done anything. This is very different. This is something that we can just do in an office planning, but for doing, you need to go to the streets. So these are just some key points. How to plan that tourism is a white flag in a world where war is still a proposal.
Perdão, porque eu estou sendo muito.
I'm sorry, because I'm being very negative, but in my country right now, the proposal is
Hacer leis que possibilitem a população
to
comprar.
develop laws that allow people to buy more fire guns. So we're not promoting the other way around to stop violence, but to something that can actually cause more violence, and that's very hard. Also reinforce positive aspects of globalization, humanity. This is what we're doing right now, scientific knowledge, ethic actions, and this we can talk about sustainability, democratization of free time. Today, for example, is Saturday morning in my country. It's mid-afternoon, and I have time to be with you. But I think about how many people actually that work as waiters or cooks that are in this moment, that are in buses and trains, or in bicycles going or coming from work. They have no free time. They're working. And this democratization of free time will happen because of the topic of richness distribution. And tourism can be very important. We have to follow ethic codes from WTO.
de ética muy
This
positivo.
is an ethic code that's very positive. Doing has very important. Only 3 articles have the word no, 6, 7, 9. Ethics makes us work when you read this very important document and you think about that really. Leopoldo Sea was a philosopher from Mexico that said that we need to overcome utopia from Latin America. For example, you can see
Las frases para vender el
the
turismo.
slogans, the phrases to sell tourism in our countries. Colombia's magical realism, Peru, land of the Incas, Guatemala, heart of the man world, magic worlds, Suriname, a colorful experience. Brazil, till today, it was sensational. And now it's a very interesting phrase, visit and love us. Visit and love us.
Idioma materno, el inglês, pode
So,
entender que venga al Brasil.
Just someone that actually speaks English or that doesn't speak English understands, like, come and just make love with us. It's very silly. There are groups that are working on critical perspective of tourism, and we need to reach this point.
Realidade. Isso, por isso este webinar é
Where
muito interessante. Vamos
reality, actual reality, not magic reality or reality you think about, but reality that we live in is starting to be talked about. And this reality has needs, ethics and sustainability. I wrote ethics first because I believe that sustainability in our region, in Latin America, or any other region, you will only be able to work it with ethics. And here I write the most, like, a longest idea. That's that this goal is to make sure that everyone in the universe enjoys this universe. And this is something that science and technology cannot do on its own. We need to do it together with people, with humans, put people in the basis and the heart of ethics and sustainability. Thank you very much.
Fantástica la presentación.
Thank you, Alexander. I think your presentation was fantastic. And you actually make us reflect on something that's really important. It's very true. That is seeing us as a region, as what we are. And very often we forget everyday problems because of political reasons and others. Thank you very much. We don't want to hold you back. We know you have to go your way. You just stopped very shortly to talk to us. And without further ado, I will ask Regina Schluter if she can go ahead with her presentation. For me, of course, I'm very happy to see all of you here as speakers, but for Regina, this is very special for me because I never met her. And I'm very happy to know that she's here with us to make a short intervention. As you know, Regina has made a very amazing work since a very long time in academia, in magazines that are references for all of us. I will say nothing more, and I'll go ask Regina to please go ahead with her presentation. So let me just see how this works. Good morning. I don't know if I know a lot about tourism, but I really know nothing about new technologies. So with the help of Kazem, I think we will be able to move forward. If anything, I'll just let you know. I'm really a farmer and I live in the country. So some things just stay with us and I'm very proud of that. This picture that is the beginning of my presentation. is an homage to Jafar Jafari that is obsessed with mate. And it's just to tell him that we still have mate and he can always come visit us. We also have very cute sheeps and we have really good grills, so he can also eat that. And well, the dog doesn't seem very nice, but well, what are you gonna do? Cousin, please move forward.
Ahí está.
Bueno, next, please.
Next, please.
Yo,
So I'm going to talk about a very concrete case. Here in Argentina, we have a national plan, a federal plan about sustainable development. All our provinces have a plan, but it's so old. It's something that has been done by the best experts, and it's really nice. But there are things that when you talk about regions development that need to be implemented. Usually, when we talk about these big projects, big studies, they always end up, as the tourism secretary from Argentina said, they just end up making more space up in a library. And some of these topics cannot just go to library because they really need to be solved. And that's something that Alessandra mentioned, that we need to step out of the walls from universities and actually go to the reality and work on it. This is Buenos Aires province. It's a different region, but you can see here the northern part of the province of Buenos Aires. That is the area that focuses on agriculture. Argentina is an agricultural country, works a lot on cattle, and is very known because of agriculture and cattle. We hear soil, climate, and everything makes it good for cattle raising. But we have this specific zone where we don't even have half of the conditions that we have in other areas. This originally was called as Patagonia. This region was incorporated to the Patagonia. You can also see the most important zones of this province. So there's something about this, that when you choose all of the measurements to actually take all the measures, you think about a region where that has a lot of wellness. But really, no one that raises cattle can say that they win a lot of money. But anyways, Patagonia is really not an area that earns a lot of money. But what's really the problem? The problem is in public policies that have been implemented. Also because of what has come with technology. Today, to implant crops, you need a lot of money. So in this country, if I earn a lot of money, there's really no problem. But if I don't, there is. Because what has been happening is that technology for agriculture has been changing. And in order for you to work, you need top-hand agricultural technology. So if I can't access that technology, and if I can't access resources to implement crop growing, cultivation, because today people think that cultivation is just throwing seeds, but no, soil needs actually to be prepared. And as we all know, we are in the middle of climate change. People still talk about something that will happen related to climate change, but people that live here in the country, we actually feel climate change. Beer production has decreased because of climatic problems. We're going through droughts, and when it rains, it really doesn't rain. Someone actually said, well, good and bad governments don't affect me. Who affects me is that guy that's up there that's called St. Peter. If he doesn't want to send water, I'm worse than with a worse bad government. But if he sends water, I'm really good. So what we have been doing has been looking for an alternative. So income actually stays with this. Next, please. So one of the first things that we need to solve is to recognize this, that we are in a bad place. Now, what do we do with tourism? We heard a lot of things that Alessandro said, and I really agree with him. We're not going to create new centers or anything. The problem here is agriculture and cattle raising. It's not tourism. So what we're going to do is take the tourist that goes through this zone, just transiting, passing by to another country. Please just give me a second. I'm gonna get a glass of water.
Perdón, esto no es COVID, esto es nervios.
I'm sorry, this is just not COVID, it's just age. So, where was I? Oh yeah, in Buenos Aires province, beach areas. We have a lot of touristic areas, zones. We have very important places related to tourism. Some of them are small, but they do bring a lot of tourists from this zone, the same area. But at the same time, because these are three main routes that go there, go south towards Patagonia and to the main touristic areas of Patagonia. So this is a very high, heavy traffic area, especially for foreign tourists that prefer to go there in a car because they can see what Argentina really is, places like La Panta. So since we have heavy traffic, we propose to create new products, agricultural products that, see, these products, the idea is for them to be sold as souvenirs for tourists, meaning products that tourists may buy. And to do this, we implemented an incentive to small and medium businesses. Usually small and medium businesses, we offered them credit lines. But people are very not willing to take a credit because in Argentina, it is said that the best way to lose all you have is to get involved with a bank. But the incentive they actually needed was on one side contact and another side assessing them. So that way we would empower.
Siempre es lo mismo, así que ya no hables.
¿Cómo?
Bueno,
sorry?
sigue adelante, por favor. Les pedimos a quienes no están haciendo uso de la palabra apaguen sus micrófonos, por favor.
Bueno, entonces,
Okay.
y después esto llevó
So this created empowerment, and since the basis of all of this was agriculture, we worked together with the National Institute for Agricultural Technology, that is INTA, that has tourism-related groups. And INTA works with rural producers and has staff that specializes in tourism. We can also assess them. Next, please.
Entonces, de ahí surgieron unas propuestas.
That's how our proposal was born. One of our proposal was, well, this is upside down. First, we started with the introduction of new productive activities, meaning we would stay with what we have, but we would create new activities that can produce products that can be interesting for tourists transiting by. So on one side, people will see what we're doing. So on one side, there's interest from local population for these new products. And on the other side, there are new touristic attractions in what we can put as rural community tourism. So people don't really want visits, they want for those visits to buy from them. The idea is that tourists buy what is produced. And to also improve this, what we proposed was to actually give value to the cultural patrimony in Buenos Aires, particularly in Southwest. We see the works of an Italian architect, Francisco Salamone. This architect filled out Buenos Aires with his work, and these are basically three: the City Hall, that is the main building, the Matadero, that also has a characteristic that is something similar to a knife on the top, because that's where you kill animals, and also cemeteries. This cemetery you see here is one of his biggest works, and it's located in another locality. But originally, it was in the middle of nothing. You would transit by, and all of a sudden, you would see this huge building with a cross and everything else. It was just mind blowing. It really catch your attention, and people were attracted to that. Now, there's a lot of buildings around it, but more than one person asked, why is it so round? But it seems that this architect was very much fan of roulette. So this represents roulette, where he would actually lose what he would earn from his work. That's what they say, but yeah, I don't know. But beyond these routes, we can create, for example, the route of Francisco Caramone was created. We can also create thematic routes with these new products that were developed. So in some ways, we would start to create touristic products, but a product that we could call light, something that may not really attract a lot of tourists, but people that are headed south, that transit by, feel motivated to go through all of these places and to acquire the products that are sold here. So here, we would also give another alternative, and that is that the own community could find something interesting to go out on weekends and visit these places and also get products. Next, please. The actions we took were the participation in these areas for projects to be created that could be worked, because basically this is directed to people that live in the place, not abstract people, but concrete characters that have their own small businesses or do something, and they want to improve their own situation by selling their products to tourists. It's not something abstract. These are just people in concrete. So we have projects not too long ago, we have some projects to export some products. And the people that live in this area can have access to that. Something else that just I forgot to mention is that these people started to do networking. Everyone that was interested in doing something related to tourism would actually network in the same groups of INTA. The group of INTA would help all of these small businesses and producers to be trained in whatever specific topic, and they will also give them all of the information they needed to access things they wouldn't even imagine before. Something else that was considered was to hire and work with investigation teams from universities. Both INTA or any other public center can hire investigation teams from universities. When I was in the Universidad Nacional de Quilmes, I worked with Universidad Nacional de La Plata and Universidad Nacional de San Martín. And we worked in something that was just assessing tourism matters on how to present your products and so on. Besides, we also have in Southwest Zone the university where they have tourism undergrad, and that is National South University. And this is where a lot of young people study, that they are interested in tourism, but these people are farmers or cattle raisers. And they're more attracted to tourism, but they still don't want to lose their nexum with farm countryside. So this undergrad goes really well for them. And they afterwards go work in their same cities as promoters, directors, or whatever the municipality created as job position or is available. And also the support not only for university students, so on, but the university itself support them, both public and private areas. Next, please. Here, you can see the two most important routes. So we have the route of ceremony, but that's just cultural. This is something that was created because of these projects in the province of Buenos Aires related to sustainable tourism. So there's nothing big. You're not going to find huge vineyards or spectacular vineyards like in Mendoza, but they do serve a purpose. You can see one here. And that is a place where they do red wine and white wine. It's a good wine that you can buy specifically to take as a souvenir. I wouldn't give it as a gift to Jafar because I know what he likes. It's not his wine style. But more to the south, in a place that's called Madame's. Because I believe someday life will cross paths between Jafar and I. So I want to give him wine. But in that province I just told you about, they do make really good wine that is not very known in that zone, but from what they say is the wine that is served in Jiao Jiao Hotel in Bariloche. That is one of the most famous hotels. And it's really one of the best ones. I know Jafar will like it. And there are other more cheap wines, but you have different types of wines. There's also one vineyard in particular that is not that big that makes first wines, sparkling wines. What used to be called champagne, but now it's for us it's called sparkling wine. So this area is very important because it takes the grapes from smaller vineyards that don't have the possibility to actually produce their own wine, and they work with them. So small businesses also have the opportunity to bring here their own wines, their own grapes, to be preserved. For example, this place that is very famous also has a very good restaurant with a chef. So people that are going by, or anyone that is from that region, is attracted because people from Italy, Germany, and so on are there. You see it very like, what's going on? But it's all of those tourists that go to Patagonia and just decide to stay one more day in this area, and we achieve our goal in these cities. So there's one night that they can stay there, and the tourist can stay 24 hours and actually contributes to that local population's economy. And this is a topic about vineyards in southwest of Buenos Aires that is very something we take a lot of pride about. It's not something that you need special knowledge or anything. It is a bit complex area. For example, for us in Buenos Aires, this is the coastal area. And in this area, soil is very grainy. It has some sand. We have black sand, black soil that is good for agriculture because it withholds a lot of water. But for wine, it's not that good because wine needs soil that's grainier than what we have. And on the other side, the highest areas the problem is that heat is very high. So we can start the day with 1 or 2 degrees below zero. But coming to the afternoon, we are 15 degrees above zero. And also these are very vineyards that need specific temperatures or cannot withhold very low temperatures. Regina, can we just start to finish, please? Just 2 more words, please. And this is a topic about olive groves. Oh, okay, we can go ahead. I think you saw the olive grove. Next slide, please. This is the last one. Something else that we have, cheese to pair with wine, and also a whole area of charcuterie. Next, please. And we're done. Thank you.
Buenísimo. Muchas gracias.
Very good. Thank you very much, Regina. Now is a turn for Edna Rosso. I don't know if she's ready.
Claro que sí, Francisco, muchas gracias.
Yes, of course, Francisco. Thank you very much. Edna Rosso, as you may know, Dr. Edna Rosso is a distinguished Colombian academia expert with long knowledge and studies. Right now, she is the dean of the Colombian University. She also directed the tourism magazine, Colombia, and we are very happy she accepted our invitation.
Gracias a mis
Thank you very
colegas.
much, Francisco. Thank you to my colleagues. I'm very honored to be here with Jafar Jafari and with Regina, that I only saw her once in Argentina. And it's so nice to see her again in this place,
Bueno,
Alexandre.
yo me voy a centrar en el caso colombiano. No sé si ya
So I'm
están.
going to be focused on the case of Colombia. I don't know if you can see my screen.
Dos de los aspectos que nos
Two
solicitó
of the main aspects Francisco asked us to consider for the presentation were first, social cultural perspective of sustainability, the achievements we've had, and in the second part of the presentation, I'll be talking about some of the challenges we've had in a situation that I think you all know. It's very complex that we're going through in Colombia, a series of social demands, social protests that are added to the impact of the now ongoing pandemic in Colombia and Latin America. When it comes to achievements in Colombia, I want to share with you the focus that we've had for the last 20 years. On one side, I want to make emphasis on public policies from a central level that has been promoted from the central government. Tourism-wise, Colombia has a lot of centralized decision-making model that goes upwards, and local tourism receives the impact of those policies. And let's just say the decisions for public policies were taken for Bogota, a very centralized country. When it comes to sustainability, the country fed on technical laws from different sectors in Colombia since the years of 2005. There's a model that aligns completely with ISO laws, the International Standardization Organism. Therefore, this is a speech that is built against free market, neoliberal market. It's something that Colombian government is going to promote, is that sector that comes from the key chain of tourism implements criteria for sustainability, meaning we'll be moving forward with a technocratic vision, something that's very rationalized, in a way that if private sector decides to internationalize cost because of the cultural environmental impact, they can do it willingly. So with this, we were up to 2012. Between 2005 and 2012, there were only a few enterprises that started to use these instruments. And because of this, national government decides in 2012 to make these laws now mandatory. So we moved from this very light green where we were, that was just voluntarily or willingly implement these laws, both companies and destinations. And starting 2012, the state starts to mandate the private sector to assume responsibility more directly when it comes to negative impact from this activity. So we're gonna introduce a more corporate model of sustainability where the state will assume these laws for all destination and enterprises. On another hand, for the last 20 years, the country has had a series of alternative projects on sustainable development, where tourism is assumed as a tool to strengthen community processes, to strengthen processes on a very local basis with a different logic from what the central government had. And other proposals were built based on an alternative vision based locally, and this will add up to this focus. So very shortly, I'll just mention that effectively. This model of sustainable tourism goes very formal, where you will try to make a relationship between conservation and economical growth. And something that Francisco mentioned is how the model, it has prevailed, the vision merely environmentally, or other criterias have been developed when it comes to social cultural dimension. This is the model that Colombia will be promoting from these three dimensions, main classic ideas from sustainable development, a vision that is built very much on the logic of environmentalism and will allow us to work with the small package where the most focus will be on environmental requisites, but also other criterias or indicators when it comes to the other two dimensions will be related and involved. This is something that will also be shared with the world, where the economic dimension will prevail, but the other two ones will also add up to a more wide dimension. These are some of the laws that were published. We have two most important ones. The general one that is, let's say, a package of more than 80 criteria and indicators that incorporates requisites for sustainability in the three dimensions for any destination that wants to start implement these good practices. The law for beaches that is very related to the blue flag seal and the rest of the laws that are focused based on the type of service that tourism that is being offered. What will these tools share? Let's say when it comes to environment, they will show good practices, how to conserve water, energy, how to properly do garbage disposal. But lately, other criteria has been incorporated that are very important. That is to say, reduce of gas production that can be actually lethal for the world, and a lot of elements that are very in line with the sustainable development goals from the United Nations. And so other criteria that, let's just say, that are like third generation when it comes to environmentalism. And of course, other elements related to saving the environment. But the one that's key for Colombia is the social cultural ones. We need to start working on good practices for saving our cultural patrimony and prevention of social risks. This is something that will be very important for Colombia, like, for example, sexual exploitation, the avoidance of sexual exploitation that is very, very bad problem in this country and in colonial destination. I think you all heard about Cartagena. That was like the treasure of the crown, that is seen as something that's amazing, it's gorgeous. And lately with the renovation of its patrimony for tourism, and is very based on what Dean McGannell planned on 70s, the authenticity of cities, but it has very huge problems about poverty and inequity. And when it comes to economy, we are going to start introducing elements on food chains and productivity chains, good employments, and the creation of local entrepreneurships. This is for topics related to food sustainability and also how to do this locally. So in Colombia, we started working with a system for the for the management of sustainable destinations. And you can see here, we'll start with activities, the evaluation of the impact of these activities. We will select the places where these processes are going to be led. So we take those impacts, those processes to localities, and then will be valued on the 3 dimensions we mentioned. And from that, it will be prioritized towards impacts, actions that will allow these to actually help with good management. And we'll also plan from that. You can see here some of the certified destinations from places that are already certified and have started developing towards this focus. What does this mean? That besides the ISO normatives, these destinations have started developing their own proposals. And this is where the process turned very interesting, because let's just say that this regulation establishes what are we going to do to actually be responsible with cultural patrimonies, but it does not say how. And these hows is where each community decided they were going to move forward. For example, Puerto Nariño in Amazonas was one process that really took the key for a country, because it was led by the indigenous communities. Puerto Nariño is the second municipality of Amazonas, and it was the indigenous authorities that led the process and wanted to harmonize this vision, this cosmovision that they had with formal instrument like laws. Cartagena also worked on the implementation of this with the network chain of tourism providers. They realized they could not exclude small businesses or private businesses. So they also needed to take into account on all of these processes, people that work from informal tourism. Because Cartagena is one of the 5 poorest cities in Colombia with a lot of inequity. And this made Cartagena make a more participation related model, more inclusive model. Playa del Muerto is a destination of the Colombian Caribbean where the Afro-Caribbean communities led the process, but certification was not carried out to its fullest. And also the historical center of Bogota and other historical center, where what I want to point out is that social governance was actually empowered based on this. What criteria are included in social cultural dimension? The conservation, promotion, and responsible use of cultural local patrimony, the respect towards indigenous communities, Afro-Caribbean communities. So we're going to go through to see why this is so important and explains why really historic violence is a topic very, very key to understand Colombia's development, because it talks about access to all of these different areas that allow this development to happen. And of course, it's related to security that Latin America lacks. Topic of the prevention of social risks, that is very important. It's very important for both children and adolescents, and other criteria like the control of the amount of tourism, especially in areas that are very fragile socially and naturally. And also something that's very important is that satisfaction of the community and of the tourists should go hand to hand, and the creation of behavioral codes, meaning you're not going to take the World Tourism Organization Code of Conduct, but local actors are going to build their own codes of conduct. What do tourists have to do? What do we have to do? What the public sector has to do just to stand out the dimension, the economic and social dimension. It has a lot to do with social development, sustainable development, because it talks about buying, consuming products from vulnerable destinations. These are one of the workshops where we already started working with them. It's one of the social cultural maps, and the indigenous communities actually worked on how they were going to define what tourists were going to do, what they could do, what they could not do, and the areas that were actually sacred, where tourists could not enter because our areas that in their own cosmovision have a very high spiritual value. Therefore, tourism is not allowed in these areas. Now, when I mentioned prevention of social exploitation, children, adolescents, and so on, and the codes of conduct for each destination, this is, you can see here, if you search for codes of conduct in every destination of Colombia, they change drastically. So for Puerto Nariño, it was something built between all of his people, all of their governments. And you can see how the community is actually the one that leads the identity of social cultural dimension and impacts this to move forward and build good practices. It's one of the models of governance and sustainability that was work, where they would name a leader for each dimension with the participation of public participation. They would be able to actually produce good practices. I would also like to stand out beyond this vision. Colombia has formed an entire practice of community-based tourism. It has its highs and lows, but the interesting part is that Colombia has been fed of the civil society. So in contrast to the sustainable tourism model that came from the local government, this actually provides opportunity to be more established, and the central government started to assume that as its own, and especially in the zones that used to be war zones, where conflict has not been really something that has been worked because of access and so on, but they have started to build these visions related to tourism, where the national government starts to talk. This started about 2 years ago, where the current government started working towards this and the social demands that we have currently. So let's say that it is an alternative model that has been built besides, and even though the complex situation and local actors are betting on tourism in their own communities. You can see many examples here of tourism related processes. And I would just want to present the challenges that we have in Colombia right now. Colombia is the 7th poorest country in Latin America in extreme poverty and poverty. Besides, is the second most inequitable country in Latin America, sadly for our place. It's the sixth most inequitable country worldwide. And this gives very complex challenges to Colombia. We all know Colombia is very rich in biodiversity. We're the second most biodiverse country besides Brazil. but I think Brazil is 3 times bigger than Colombia. We have a national system of protective areas that represents around 15% of national territory. You can see here all of the protected areas, including more than 700 reserves from the civil society. To that map, you can put this one on top so you can see all of the indigenous towns and territories that are also located in the areas with the highest biodiversity of the country. So partially you can understand why the historic violence in Colombia, these are the territories that are still at war because they're the territories with the highest biodiversity, with mineral richness, and where tension actually is built on the use of territories. Indigenous population and their richness, their treasures are actually saved in these areas. And that's why the problem on human violence and human rights that still stands in these territories. So we're talking that more than 15% of national territory actually has minorities in Colombia. However, as I mentioned, we have a problem on economic poverty very strong. This pandemic actually augmented, increased this on 6.8%. Colombia has 42.9% of its population living in poverty. That's financial poverty and social poverty. And multidimensional poverty, we have very high rate on populated areas and rural areas, and that's also increased with the pandemic and also coincides with the areas with the highest biodiversity. What impact has it had specifically? Well, it has had more incidents in women. The impact of pandemic has been really felt in urban areas, but it has also impacted indigenous and farmer populations, besides the social demands that have started lately with the non-dialogue rule from the government that has produced more violence. We do believe in Colombia that tourism can be an actual tool to reduce violence, to reduce poverty, to relieve historic differences, but we have a lot of things to do related to this because even though local initiatives are very varied, there is no actual national initiative that tourism can help against government. It is said that local tourism, local economy can actually be the one to solve poverty. But our point of view is very different if we consider that tourism can actually change the drift, the projected view on this. And I do believe that tourism, especially alternative tourism, can be a big support to strengthen matters on territorial balance, poverty reduction, strengthening of local producing chains. Something else that can be helped out by tourism is ethics. For example, if we consider different policies, like for example, different policies for parents, different policies for single mothers, and so on, we can actually value what we have, our culture, and it's a more wide point of view.
Perfecto.
Please, let's begin to finish. I'll just leave here some of the challenges here. In the case of Colombia, how can we actually build up the instruments of territorial development, for example, life plans and saving life plans for indigenous communities. How can we build social capacity, social capital? Our territories that are very biodiverse are moved by other rules, other laws, and we need to build upon these visions that are completely different from what we have on economic rationale, and how to achieve tourism to add up to a multifunctional, multidimensional point of view. If we want tourism to help these territories, we need tourism to actually focus on helping agriculture, cattle, and culture, something that we have yet to overcome Colombia, is that these territories need to be approached to national and worldwide market. And there are huge gaps on technology and technological development between these cities. Last but not least, I would like to send out that these territories are really building valuation and narratives based on the local experiences. And from what we just mentioned, we need to build locally from what the communities believe must be valued both socially and culturally to build into tourism. Thank you very much, Francisco. I'll just leave the floor for my other colleagues.
Corresponde ahora el turno a Rodolfo Lizano, un viejo amigo, un amigo viejo, no sé cómo decirlo, Rodolfo, un profesional experto de la sostenibilidad, del turismo, y quien ha hecho, yo no tengo ninguna duda, una extraordinaria contribución en la búsqueda de construir este ángulo, pero más allá del discurso en la realidad, más allá de el apunte académico, pues con el trabajo
beyond academia. Rodolfo is the director of planning of tourism board in Costa Rica and has had the opportunity to see how time also moves forward towards this commitment. And it's totally feasible from what Costa Rica really does related to sustainability. And Rodolfo has been there in all of these stages. So Rodolfo, it's a pleasure to have you. Please go ahead. Thank you. Good morning to all of you. And thank you, Dr. Jafari, to you, Francisco, for inviting me. And of course, it's always nice to hear my colleagues, Dr. Panoso, Edna, Regina, that I've never met her, but it's really a pleasure to meet her. I always learn a lot from what they're doing. So focused on the topic, when they said challenges and achievements, I decided to first go through some of the achievements and that we've had and close with the challenges. As Francisco mentioned, I've been analyzing the topic of sustainability for a lot of years, probably started around the years 90s. And the first thing I understood, and it's something that Dr. Panosa and Edna mentioned, is that all of our economic process is articulated with this belief that first, there's always going to be a viable future. The second is that there's always going to be possibility for growth. Therefore, we need to grow more, and growth is a rule. And now this belief also indicates that what you earn from an investment, you need to reinvest it to achieve more growth. And the third part of that belief is that the final obligation is the distribution of wellness to generate more wellness. It's portrayed over there. So after the Second World War, that was the model that was taken. Let's just say that's the literal model. Sustainability for me came to question that belief. And it said, hey, let's be careful. We don't really know if we have a future. Resources may end, and that could actually be a problem for that model. Second is that productive processes may not always be efficient, and externalities are not always taking account. And this is a challenge for production. And the third is that the distribution of richness and wellness is not something that happens naturally. And these three aspects of sustainability, when we talked about this symposium, we decided to focus on the last one. We're not going to talk about production, environment, or anything like that. We're going to be focused on richness and wellness and how this does not happen naturally and how this relates to tourism. So what I wanted is to show three things that for me are achievements. I'm going to be focusing on Costa Rican examples, but as we saw with Edna, Dr. Panoso, and Regina, we also have different examples that these achievements can be noticeable in other areas. The first one is that we were able to advance in new ways to measure the advancement of sustainable development. Today, I believe we can measure what the sustainability means, and we can somehow understand it better and influence with different programs. The second is that during all of these years, we have realized that in order for sustainability to actually work, we need to have people get involved with it. You can have the best plans, as Regina mentioned, but if we don't involve other people, sustainability will not be achieved. So when we learned that, we understood, as Anna said, that what we have to focus on is that people should work, and how do we really strengthen business sectors. And the third one is the capacity to involve and recognize the effort of business sectors in support of sustainability. And as Edna said, that has to be related to production. But I think that's something that we also have learned, and I would consider this an achievement. I'm going to mention three short examples, and I'll finish up with the challenges that we are going through. The first way that we can realize we learned how to measure, I want to mention the Social Progress Index of touristic centers Costa Rica. You can see here our partners. Of course, Costa Rica cannot do it alone. So we have partners, in this case, INCAE, the CLACDS, and Social Progress Imperative. So what is this index? The Social Progress Index is a measurement that allows us, please, I'm sorry to be this simple, but it allows us to determine how much of the richness from can be used to help the growth of tourism and social progress index. So you can see here, you have 3 dimensions, 12 components, 52 indicators that can be measured in each touristic destination, and we have numerical results obtained out of this. The way we do it with methodology is questionnaires, and we have specialized company based on that made these questionnaires. So we talk about basic needs. For example, here you have nutrition, water, housing, personal security. This tool does not measure effort where there's a school or anything. It measures if people are satisfied with their children's education, if they have clean water and if someone is sick, there's someone that can help them. It does not measure effort, but result. How do people feel? So this, I'm sorry, this only includes social and environmental indicators, non-economic. So this allows us, for example, you have a map here of Costa Rica on your left, and this allows us to rank a touristic destination based on the IPS level, the Social Progress Index. This information is granular, and when we take out the information of each of these destinations, it does not say a lot the ranking, but when you go and you see a particular destination, this index will tell you where the people that the things that I should pay more attention to are, and what are the things that I will be more willing to do. Costa Rica is a very small but ambitious country, so we call touristic destinations to these 32 destinations. So please don't imagine these are huge things, but for us, these are touristic destinations. We have touristic flow there. So when we have these measurements, really, it allows us to diagnose the impact of touristic sector in communities. And information is added to improve the agenda of intervention in touristic areas like social sustainability programs. And it allows you to work together with city halls, communities that can be focused on capacity building. We were able to measure entire country, and we already have started to do the second measurement. We do them every 2 years. We already started the first block of 10 destinations, but pandemic came, and so we started to take a recess. After the pandemic, we're very thrilled to measure this again because it will allow us to compare what we used to have before the pandemic and what we have now. So I believe that this is something that I would mention as an achievement from the last 10 years in social sustainability, is that we have already in place mechanisms that allow us to measure data, to have a more concrete idea before we put into practice public policies. The second achievement I would like to mention is a program to integrate people to increase tourism, both integrity for destination and cultural ability. So here we, as partners, have the Ministry of Culture, municipalities, and tourism boards. Just you can see here that municipalities are included and also tourism boards. In Costa Rica, the government system is the central government. And below the central government, you have municipal government. So we only divide it in two. And you can see here that we work in the central government with the ministry, municipality, and tourism board. And we call it the Gestion program. This is a program that is designed to strengthen the process of local achievements, to give information and do capacity building to local communities. So we also have the 32 destinations already identified, and this program works with these 32 destinations. And as mentioned and Regina showed, we also have planning processes and follow-up processes that work directly with the people in the countryside. These are very enriching processes because, of course, one of the main things we have for this is the IPS that I mentioned before. When we go to these workshops, we already have information about how the sustainability map looks like. And this allows us to offer plans that are very concrete. This is a plan that we This is a plan that we promoted to a certain community. You can see here, it's a small community, it doesn't have more than 8 to 10 pages. It's very concrete. But what I believe that is to be more important is that this plan, you have the examples here, you can see down below from plans, implementation groups, what we call implementation groups. And these groups are followed up by us. Each group is responsible of a plan and has follow-up. This program does not want to amplify, but also increase density of social organizations. We need people in destinations, communities to be organized, and that social condition is key to move forward in sustainability. This program works since 1990 and is a program on touristic sustainability. This is our third achievement. We have the University of Costa Rica, the Tour from Costa Rica, the Ministry of Culture, the INBio from Costa Rica, and CAE, and other entities. So we always have a lot of partners. The logic of this program of certification on enterprise gestion is divided to 4 main blocks.
A la rama de actividad turística y desde luego el impacto social y cultural.
Of course, the basis is social, economic, and cultural impact. This program, the certification program,
Se puede visitar la página y ahí está.
can be seen more specifically in our website, and you can do certification simulations to see how it works. And that is something else that I also believe to be an achievement, and that is that with time, we have started to agree on what social criteria is. Edna mentioned them, and I think Dr. Paras as well. And we started to agree on what these elements really are. But as Edna mentioned, we already have the what, but we need to see the how. You have to have a lot of initiative to achieve the social criteria. And these are programs that help sectors understand what sustainability is, and also shines a little light to small businesses. Before it used to be available only to hotels, but now it's available to all of tourism-related activities and providers. This is our tourism plan. Tourism fits in one sheet. And I want to show it to you because what we just saw, the IPS, the Social Progress Index, is an indicator of the general objective of our plan, meaning that the success of the tourism plan is measured based on the Social Progress Index, not on the amount of tourists. So you see how sustainable is key, because our model, our country's model, says that the country has to be sustainable, innovative, and inclusive. And in this model is why the highest objective is measured with IPS indicators. And the programs we saw have, the other programs can be related to this. So I mention this because we don't have a huge sustainability program. We have a lot of small programs that add up in one whole national tourism plan. So we have a huge image of public policies that says, let's go that way. And that's how all of these small programs end up adding up. You have more, but I only wanted to mention 3. So let's just say this is something that we learned. Let's just say something that we have moved forward. Just like a few examples. And I wanted to mention some challenges as well. Of course, these are very personal point of view. I do not represent any government related or company. First of all, what do we have to do in order for sustainability to be a part of tourism policies at its core to avoid that post-pandemic only deprives the vision of tourism growth. Meaning, what do we need to consider, sustainably speaking, to avoid that the post-pandemic only affects tourism? I think that's something very important to think about. As Dr. Panoso mentioned, is something that we need to make more emphasis on. The second is how to support the recovery of tourism employment and its impact on people and families. And that's something that also makes you think when there's a lack of local intervention. That touristic employment could probably change in the future, meaning how can really sustainability help us strengthen this recovery of touristic employment instead of substituting other type of employment? The third one, and I wanted to place it as a positive, is how can we take advantage of new technology on communication and social interaction to further push the effort to increase organizational and density intensity in tourism. The way communication is being carried out currently can actually be playing against us at a certain moment. You'll have more people connected to social media instead of real life. And for tourism sustainability, that can be a huge risk. I don't like to see it as a risk more than a solution. So how do we use this connectivity in networking, social network? How do we turn this to our favor? That's another challenge that I think we can think about. Last but not least, which steps do we need to take so product design keeps the tourist sustainability as the experience on the trip, so it will cultivate sensibility on this matter. I take this quote that says you can experience anything if you don't have sensitivity, and you can't develop sensitivity if you don't have practice experience. Nobody can develop sensitivity towards wine if they don't drink wine. And you take a lot of time to actually allow us to recognize experiences. And with sustainable tourism, same thing happens. It's not you just went to one trip and you already have experiences. We have to develop ways to not just say we're going to design experiences, but the space for people to actually develop sensitivity and they are able to recognize experiences there. This would be all for me. I am very thankful for the space, and that would be all for me.
Muchísimas gracias, Rodolfo. Ha sido realmente muy interesante lo que has compartido con nosotros, sobre todo porque nos das este ángulo de una experiencia que se está todo el tiempo llevando a la práctica, ¿no?
Thank you very much, Rodolfo. You are giving us an idea of experience that is actually being put into practice and the value of it. And in a process similar to that, we'll always have achievements and challenges. If you allow me, I would like to make a short presentation as well. And we're going to try to, at the end, have a small Q&A session. Now I have seen 2 or 3 questions in the chat. And now my presentation will last about 10 minutes, I think. And at the end of this presentation, we'll take around 10 minutes to 2 or 3 questions. Now, the reflection that my partners, my colleagues have made, very important. And I'm very happy to know that we are aligned with our chain of thought, although we probably have different priorities. based on our own reality, our own environment. I would like to share with you today in this dimension of sustainability, with emphasis on the social part, job that we have been building last years for a reason that seems, I don't know how to put this into word. I don't know if it's too evident or worrisome. And that is that tourism, sadly, does not have a space in the public agenda as it should. Said another way, what we want is to find a new storytelling that talks about the importance of tourism, and especially sustainability and social dimension opens a very interesting door to us. I am in charge of this investigation center. That's actually a think tank. You can see here our data so you can follow us. I wanted to really shortly mention something just to begin with. You may know about these things, maybe not, just so you know that the GDP related to tourism in Mexico before the pandemic was from around 9% of the economy. And it is very important for the international component. We have a positive richness on the touristic balance that contrast with the oil balance. Mexico used or is an oil producing country. The conditions have changed in the last few years. We've also had deficit on the commercial and manufacturing balance. Tourism in Mexico assumes to have a value chain of $65,000 million and is the fifth part of private consumption. This may come as a surprise, but let's say that this is where arguing can start. And that is that according to Statistical Institute of Mexico, we have 732,000 small businesses that are direct or indirect, meaning 93% of all touristic related companies have less than 1,000 employees and are fundamentally companies from national level. To say that tourism generates a lot of employment is right. Let's just remember Mexico before the pandemic had around 4 million jobs that were produced because of tourism. But the most important part of this, and this is where I'll change topics, I'll go to social matter. And is that this proposal, or let's just not call it proposal, that tourism isn't just an instrument of politics, but also of policies, social policies. Because if we're able to think different, we can find this new storytelling. I'll share with you some information that for us is good enough. In Mexico, the main source of employment, Mexico has very big problems of employment. The main source of employment is tourism. 20% of our population of this sector has less than 24 years old. It's the second activity that provides the most jobs to women. More than 50% of employees in this sector is taken by women. And in Mexico, there's a problem based on gender, but tourism has more women working for it. Maybe you've heard about this concept of Nini, to refer people that don't study and don't work. In tourism, we call talk about STC. Not only because of tourism, we have less than 1 million ninis in the street, but it's the main activity percentually that allow people to study and work at the same time. 37% of people who work in hotels and restaurants are young people that work and study. Mexico, as Edna mentioned, also has this inequity problem, of margination and poverty. It's a very severe problem. But when we go through it, what happens in tourist provinces against other provinces? We see that in touristic municipalities, provinces, marginalization is higher. Most of these municipalities have very high conditions of marginalization. Same thing happens with another social dimension, that's social laid back. According to official data, social laid back in municipalities is very, very low. 77% of municipalities have very low level of laid back. There's an important presentation note for tourism. I conclude saying that when it comes to poverty, that is something inadmissible in this moment in history. Mexico is a country where 42% of its population live in poverty. Probably, surely, this will increase because of the pandemic. Southwest areas of the country are still more worrisome because this level achieves up to 20%. But in these entities of the country that have a huge tourist destination and are able to develop touristic community, Quintana Roo or Cancun is, Baja California or Cabo is, poverty decreases rapidly. In Quintana Roo is only 17% of population, and Cabo is only 18. These are two entities that are mainly touristic. We can talk about these indicators for way longer, but because of time issues, I will not go further into it. But I would like to put on the table that if tourism is all of that, if we're so important, why don't we act accordingly? Tourism is not an agenda. Tourism in Mexico does not have the resources it needs to develop. This is what the pandemic took us a toll. A fall from almost half of the income from tourism, all from the GDP of tourism, economy, consumption fell as well. Consumption decreased more than $50 million. Wherever you look at it, pandemic actually took a toll on tourism that is very hot and brutal. And unfortunately, the answer of public policies has not allowed to revert this toll. In any country of the world, if we talk about the loss of million employment rates, we talk about a very huge employment issue. Here we talk about this and we're not reacting. That's why we believe that the recognition of the social benefit should be the way towards this new storytelling. So let's push, when we talk about tourism, when we talk about sustainability and social dimension, let's push this new idea. Let's talk about tourism, not about politic instrument, but as a key component of public policies. I'll leave here my information so we can stay in touch. I thank very much all of the speakers that were with us. And if you allow me, I will be taking some of the questions. So I'll start through what Gerda is asking. And I will ask Edna or Regina if they can answer for us. Says, how can you pair the benefit of receiving communities and the perspective of the touristic academia that always puts the tourist and the market in the center? Edna or Regina, whoever wants to answer this question, please go ahead. You're in mute. You have to open your microphone, Regina, please. Now? There we go. Edna, would you like to start?
Apreciada Regina, no sigue, por favor.
No, Regina, please go ahead.
Veo que somos muy diplomáticas.
I see we're very diplomatic with each other.
A ver, era cómo podemos.
So, how can we take communities, tourism-based communities, social work, right? So in my case, in this country, we all have a lot of similarities. In this region, this topic is a little bit different, right? Tourism is an alternative, and the idea is not to provide growth towards tourism, but towards the productive activity related to tourism. What makes tourism is that we do have the participation of students, because people who are involved with this are mainly students. When we have a university close by, these same students participate in tourism. And what we look for is that besides from students, we also have other people to come in, and that we receive people that are already trained in these matters. And the National Tourism Office would take care of all of the expenses and would send out the experts that they would consider the best. But yeah, I believe that students can help in all of this.
Bueno, si quieren yo complemento, digamos
Well,
que
if you want, I'll just complement this. Let's say that this is a very key aspect for academia in Latin America, and that is that we are called to be very close by to local realities. I believe in knowing my colleagues from Mexico, Francisco, Rodolfo, and all the amazing work you've done, the amazing work Regina has made. I believe that in our case, we have really good experiences of closeness from academia to support these processes of follow-up in communities. In our case, this has been very, very easy because the University of Colombia is born as a very liberal university, where the mission for us is to actually give back to the social dimension. We work very hand to hand with social extension projects, with research. So we try to systematize these follow-up experiences with research. And we have based on indigenous communities, refugee communities, to make sure that good criteria and good behavior is being implemented in communities. And this has been led by the university on all of its processes. And on another side, there's a very big debate for investigation groups. And that is, how can you really pair one with the other? How can you publish research on magazines, but not leave out your work in the communities? How do you have time enough to do those both? So I think that is more on what we know, more than a question that's an affirmation. what should you publish, where should you publish, but never leave out communities and the follow-up to those communities. Thank you very much. Now we have another question from Marco Antonio Rivera. And I would ask to help us. It says, how does touristic capacity building from communities is taken from universities to communities? I mean, how do universities does not only provide solutions, but also instruments for these capacity buildings? How can they build that up? First, I would like to make a comment on that, but I think that Edna can complement it, and Alexandria as well, who work directly with universities. I work with the tourism ministry, and our experience in this matter is that people need to be trained. Capacity building, this intensity and density of social dimension that we just mentioned is not only on tourism management, but there are other values. People should not only develop economic-based thought, but so I think that our approach needs to be wider, meaning how could I prepare something bigger for tourism? I mean, not only economy, it's necessary, but universities are more called into action to be based on ethics and development. And I think Edna mentioned very well how this double participation, capacity building, training is important, but this is a type of training that goes beyond this level and has to be adequate to the conditions that different populations have.
No, desafortunadamente
Alexander sadly had to leave us. He went by on his trip. I wanted to know if Regina or Edna wanted to add something up to what Rodolfo just said.
Bueno, si les parece, ¿te
Okay,
parece?
if you think, Regina, I'll take the word first. I'm sorry. I wanted to stand out two projects that are being implemented in Colombia. The first one is from the national government for the past 2 years, because Marco Antonio mentioned young people and how they can help. So the central government of Colombia actually proposed a scholarship program for kids in public schools that is called Schools Friends of Tourism Scholarship Program. So what they do is that they finance their university to 100%. It's a program that we wish was wider, but it makes people, and young people especially, that live way far in communities, be able to go to universities and train on this matter. And also, how do we provide better and more complete training? How do we provide actual training matters, capacity building programs? Sadly, in this program, in this country, we have a program where we have really good universities, but we all talk about higher education instead of quality technical education that we need really bad. And another matter, something that Rosa mentioned, is the development and the inclusion of knowing from the local communities. They have a lot of knowledge that we need to acknowledge, both national government and public policies for innovation of technology. So we still have something to do there. We have touristic bachelors. So secondary school can have different type of focus in places that are related to tourism, because it seems like everyone is moving towards tourism, but it's really not. but there are a lot of places where young people are interested in tourism. But in those areas we have tourism related bachelors, and that provides young people knowledge on what tourism is, how it moves, how it flows. On the other hand, many small cities that have small hotels, small businesses, they hire, where the tourism organization sends them, people who specialize in capacity building for them to train local population, and that includes young people, because especially young people can be involved with that. Older people already have their life together, but there is certain training to move forward on this topic. Thank you, Regina. For Edna, this is very key, something that someone asked. Gerda Barnholtz asked, what does Senna do in Colombia? Thank you, Edna, for remembering. Senna is the institution of technical formation, and it has a very important role. But in the matter of tourism, it's very related to small jobs like training the waiter, the cook, but it does not have more integral formation related to tourism. And sadly, quality-wise, it has been questioned, not in all of aspects. Like, for example, when it comes to gastronomy, it's really good. But right now, SENA would be a very important instrument to provide technical education to all of the country, because it has innovative centers in small populated areas, and they have a wide reach to provide training. I think that an alliance between SENA and other universities centering trainings would be very important, so they could continue to accomplish their goal for education in the country. Thank you very much, Edna. I have no further questions, just a comment from someone that identifies himself as Win7. He says that there are a lot of similarities between Asian, Southwest, Southeast countries. So we could help each other in choosing the good and qualified path of tourism development. So doing this, I would only like to thank everyone who have taken the time this Saturday. You may not know this, but in Mexico, today is Teachers' Day. So this has been a gift for many who were here. I'm very thankful. Regina, Edna, Rodolfo, Alessandre, of course, for all of your time, your motivation, everything you shared with us, what you shared with us. Very important topics were mentioned here. I learned a lot. And also thank Kasim that helped us with this work. Thank you very much, Kasim.
For this nice opportunity to discuss these very important issues. Could you, Jafar, make some closing remarks, please?
No sé si no tiene el micrófono apagado.
You're mute. Okay. Go ahead, please, Jafar.
Well, thank you very much, Paco, for a wonderful panel discussion with panelists. I have the voice of the interpreter at the same time. Is it possible to fade your voice? Anyway, okay. Thank you very much again. A wonderful, wonderful panel. Learned a lot about Latin America, about America actually. And I like one of the slides of, well, I like many of the slides, but one of the particular from Rodolphe was challenges and opportunities. And we had the opportunity of talking about various possibilities in Latin America and everywhere: tourism development, product development, alternative forms of development, and so on and so forth. As to the opportunities, also, I would like to add a question that answer a question that many people ask: is tourism coming back after coronavirus? And I have a definite answer about that in my own mind. And tourism is here to stay. Tourism will not go away. Tourism is part of our social fabric, it's part of the DNA of a human being, and mobility is going to be all with us, and tourism is an expression of mobility. So it's going to come back. It has a slow return, but it's going to definitely come back. But going to the challenges that was in one of the slides of Rodolphe is many of them, many challenges, we did not have the time to get into them, and that was not the purpose of this webinar. For example, the relationship between tourism and peace. As soon as peace goes away, tourism goes away. When terrorism, war, conflicts come in, tourism goes out. We experience also a pandemic now. So we see that pandemic is not also a friend of tourism. Whenever it appears, tourism, when it checks in, tourism checks out immediately. So we have issues bigger than ourselves, bigger than our industries. The other one that we have started talking about is climate change. And climate change is going to have a dramatic impact on hospitality and tourism and the development of it. And one challenge that many challenges were offered by the panelists, but one of them was Alessandro, and the challenge of bridging tourism theory and practice. We university people have lots of ideas, but our ideas don't go far away. They do not penetrate the industry. So we have to come up with ways to bridge the industry and academia, both committed to study of tourism. So once more, I would like to thank everybody for your presentation. Paco, particularly yourself, for your efforts. Rodolphe, Regina, Edna, Alessandra, and of course, Carmen, who did the translation for us. And my colleagues, Kazem, who's with us, who was the person behind the system of technology to make sure the communication takes place between us, and the other partner who was not with us, Duarte Moraes from Portugal, and I thank him as well. So thank you very much, Paco. I hope we can continue. I hope, Paco, there would be a part 2, and I hope you take the initiative of initiating the part 2. Maybe next time part 2 would be in English, and we would have translation in Spanish. And I invite all of you to join our future webinars. Just go to our website, and you have a menu of choices ahead of you. And if you have any suggestions for themes, and you're willing to do them, by all means. If you have suggestions but you're not willing to do them, pass on the theme to us, and we will do a panel on it sometime in the future. The panels we are scheduling now are going to be in 2022. 2021 is complete. Thank you very much once more.
Thank you very much. Gracias a todos. Tengan ustedes un buen sábado. Hasta luego.
Thank you very much. Have a nice Saturday. See you later.
Thank you.
Muchas gracias por la invitación.
Thank you, Cassandra.
Gracias, un gusto.
Thank you,
Adiós.
everyone. Muchas gracias.
Thank you.
Gracias.